From the ECSI Sports Studios and the #1 sports investors in America, we bring you the closing bell. As the market closes, legends Jeff Dawson and Riley Magnuson bring you all the sports investing tips for tonight's matchups. If you want to learn more from the two legends at the desk, make sure you stay tuned to the closing bell.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the co-host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your closing bell for Monday, October 2nd, 2023. We turned the calendar. MLB regular season done. Playoffs tomorrow, 4 games. NFL week's over, week 4. All but tonight. Seattle travels to the Meadowlands, New York, whatever you want to call it. Currently, right now, at circa Seattle minus 2.5 with a 46. Looks like Barkley will be out there. Shout out to our new sponsor and partnership, WagerWire. Couldn't be happier, couldn't be more stoked, excuse me. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Zach. Looking forward to a long relationship here as we here at ECSI look forward to, on a daily basis, working with you, talking about the app, talking about all your resources and what we can do to help the individuals that really want to be serious in this market and treat sports as an investment, not just entertainment. And lastly, shout out to the boys behind the desk. I'm going to go Joe Shea, Evan Hall, Olu, and maybe even Bennett. Shout out to you guys there. And a special thanks to my co-host here, Mr. Riley Magnuson. It's been a while since him and I did a show, and it's more on my end here, obviously. Life gets busy, times get busy, afternoons get busy, yada, yada. But we're back here 3 months till the end of 2023. It's been an epic year so far for ECSI, the VIPs. Great weekend. We closed yesterday hitting 3 of the 4 action parlays. We are truly enjoying Envelope Monday with the +2 units throughout the week before the 3 parlays. Tennessee Titans +3.5. We bought the full point and the money line +127. Dallas -5.5 and the money line. And the Jets +9. And we also had them on the money line. It looked good for a while. It's a fun game. And Mr. Mahomes, thank you for sliding into home. I like that. Smart move. We didn't want to give the ball to the Jets and the cover there. So without further ado, let's bring him in. My co-host, the one and only Mr. Riley Magnuson. What is up, sir?
What is up, my friend? Good afternoon. Happy Monday. Happy new month of 2023 here as we get rocking and rolling as you thread 3 months. And you and I said it before the show. I almost don't want to say it because we've had such a full month of awesome playoff action on the horizon for baseball. We've got a full month of awesome football action on the horizon. And then you mentioned we've got college basketball in about a month starting up. So, which I'm not going to be upset about once we do get that mixed in with everything. As much as it sounds weird to say it right now, but we're putting the card a little too far ahead here. But no, it's been a solid couple of months of action as far as getting football started. As you know, I was up in Lambeau on Thursday, getting my heart ripped out from that sense. So that one was ugly, but we're hoping to bounce back there. But no, a solid weekend as well. One of my lighter college football weeks of the volume-wise of the year so far this past weekend. And then a couple of winners, couple of losers yesterday. Under in Tampa Bay, New Orleans was as much as an ugly game that was. I was soaking that one up, so that was nice. Loser on Carolina. I know I've been kind of one of the people on the island that Carolina's defense is going to keep them in some games. And they were, but obviously that offense, I'm sure we'll talk about some teams here around the league today because we only got one game going on tonight. So plenty of random things to talk about to fill the gaps. But that Carolina team, I might have to pump the brakes. I've been Close on a handful of them, or a couple of them so far, but obviously much left to be desired. And I'm kind of on an island with my perception of at least not thinking they're the worst team in the league, which I know a lot of people do. But my opinions might be changing on that. But nonetheless, big basketball trade last week while I was up in Wisconsin, so that was interesting to see the kind of first-hand reaction up in Wisconsin and in that area. It was pretty cool. So. And I'm a huge Dame Lillard fan, so excited to potentially even drive up an hour or two to see some games next year in Milwaukee. And obviously, the Boston Celtics in your neck of the woods making some moves on top of it as well. So the NBA is trying to stay relevant as they always do, but nonetheless, it's still football season. It's still baseball season. So I'm ready to rock and roll, my friend. As we mentioned, only one game tonight, which should be a decent game, but nonetheless, plenty of stuff to talk about today.
Well, I don't know where to go, so I'm just going to bounce around here. So you started with the NBA. Let's go there. The whole off season, it was Dame. I'm going to Miami. I'm going to South Beach. I'm going to get jiggy with it. And if you went back on his timeline in 2022, he was asked, what one player do you want to make sure you end your career playing with? And he said, Giannis. And if you went back a week prior, you could have got 30-1 Dame to Milwaukee. Now, I love the trade. Phoenix got involved. I think Portland made out well as well. And then I'm going to take it to the next step locally. Then it's the Drew Holiday, sweepstakes. And then it seemed what I was hearing that Miami was going to probably be the team. I heard some whispers, maybe Philly. Toronto felt they got slighted because there was rumors. I think it was Shams or someone said that he was heading, Dame was heading to Toronto. And unfortunately, the locals loved the deal, but they had to overpay. The 2 first rounders, I don't really give a rat's ass about at this point. They're just meaningless, especially if you're a good team. We knew Brogdon was unhappy. The fact that Time Lord, now when healthy, and that's a big win. He's one of the best rim protectors in the game, so super athletic, but the easy thing would have been Brogdon, Horford in the first twos, and they basically, we don't want that old man Al. And so the Celtics gave a lot up to stay pat with Milwaukee. So assess the Milwaukee deal, and then from an outsider looking in, the thoughts and what you're hearing about the Celtics trade.
Yeah, as far as the Milwaukee deal, like I said, I think it's a match. I don't know what match made in heaven, but it's a fantastic match when you've got a guy that Giannis can kick out to, or Lillard can obviously create and have Giannis as another option. So I think that is fantastic offensively. You obviously have a Milwaukee team that feels like they, maybe if they kept the core that they had the next handful of years, maybe they give a good run or two at it each year. But obviously feel like instead of maybe we'll make a nice run at it, let's get aggressive and try and put the chips down on the table and not only make a run at it, but be the team that people, if we're rocking and rolling like we should, the team that people fear. So I like it a lot from that sense. I think it could be really, really exciting. And Damian Lillard obviously is now on the best team that he's ever been on in his entire life. So it's interesting to see what he'll do. Numbers wise, maybe points per game wise, he might dip a little bit, but that's because you've got Giannis doing what he's doing, and Lillard can obviously kind of create off of him. So I think it's fantastic. I think that's going to be really, really great to watch. And then Drew Holiday, I mean, you go back to that championship that the Bucks won, and obviously the Bucks don't win that without Giannis, but I don't think they also win that if it's Giannis without Drew Holiday, who, when you say his name, is not obviously a guy that is filling up the stat sheet and people think of when the game changers in the NBA. But because of what he could do both ends of the floor, he's an extremely valuable asset. And a Celtics team who hasn't gone, they're typically the team the last, decade or two, obviously different regime than it was a handful of years, that tries to get the better end of they try to be the ones that catch people into overselling, right? So to see them do that for a guy who's not a, 25, 30 point score per game guy, who obviously they have that in, I think says a lot about Drew Holiday and what he can bring there. And the fact that on top of that, we make the massive, what could be historical, should be a historical remembered trade in Dame Lillard, and the fact that those two, at last I checked, are about even as far as East odds are concerned, says a lot about Drew Holiday on top of that too. So I'm going to be really excited to watch both of those situations. And obviously, it's a Boston situation where you still got your two pillars that you're trying to hopefully take another step or at the very least stay consistent during those times of need in the playoffs. So I think it's great for both of them. I obviously Philly's got now the team that is kind of a Philly and Miami back against the wall. Either they're riding with what they have. Obviously, Harden, situation is Harden's situation, but they either got to get aggressive or kind of fade a little bit and maybe not take a year off, but take a year off from being that true East contender with these two teams the way they are and reconfigure next offseason, because obviously these two teams have taken a nice step towards capturing that you're penciling those two teams in, at least right now. It's hard to believe Miami, without making this deal, is going to do it again what they did last year again. And as far as Milwaukee actually making the deal, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but it kind of goes to it kind of slaps at the recent narratives. And we've been talking about this the last couple of years, especially this last year, where whether a player says something or ESPN, Fox, whatever it is, starts that rumor mill of Damian Lillard's going to Miami, Damian Lillard's going to Miami, or whatever it is the last few years. For a while, those types of trades would be carried out, and so now we're trained to believe that, if this is what everyone's hearing, then that's obviously what's going to happen. And then Milwaukee says, well, how about this trade package? And they make it happen, much to everyone's chagrin there. So thought my Bulls might have tried to get aggressive and get a little wild with it as well. They were a little the sleeper team. The deep sleeper team, but obviously that's another situation for another day. But no, I'm excited to watch those situations, and the Suns getting rid of Ayton when he's obviously not been too pleased. I'm interested to see obviously clearing way to let Booker and Durant do their thing. So I think they'll be good, the Suns again, and then Portland. I don't sleep on Portland. Obviously, we're not penciling them into any type of contention categories, but they've got some offensive talent. If they can figure out how to make it work on a night-to-night basis, then they'll at least be competitive. But on the flip side of that, if there's some egos involved, then it could obviously get it really, really ugly really quick as well. So Portland's kind of a real volatile candidate to be a 45-win team or a 25-win team. They could have a really roller coaster season. So I'm really interested to see what we see there. But nonetheless, I love these types of trades if they make sense. And I like I said, I've been begging for Damian Lillard to be on a more contending team than what the Blazers have done for him lately. So from that standpoint, as a Damian Lillard fan, I'm very excited as far as watching the Milwaukee Bucks this year.
Yeah, Miami now going to be sitting there, maybe especially the Heat fan base, they thought they were getting Lillard. And then I actually, after the trade, said, don't worry, you're going to get Holiday. It made the most sense. And the Celtics just came in, and like I said, they overpaid for it. Didn't let this even go to the weekend where it could fester and then someone else could jump in and overpay or trump them. They made it happen. And hats off to Brad Stevens. As you said, Danny, what did they used to call him? Danny.
Trader Danny.
I'm forgetting the nick. Trader Danny, there you go, who had to win every trade and, hoard all the draft picks there. This just popped onto me. I should have said it in the intro. For the locals, rest in peace, Tim Wakefield. Rest in peace, Russell Francis. Francis, a tight end for the Pats in the 70s, early 80s. Was a big fan of Russ and never met him personally, but Tim Wakefield, I got to caddy twice. They were at the Willow Bend. Greg Norman used to run a pro-am tournament once a year, sponsored by Reebok, and Emmett Smith, Roger Clemens, Tim Wakefield. A lot of big stars would come down and play a round of golf for charity. And back-to-back years, I caddied for Tim, and it was amazing. They were running a clinic, and I had to put the towel down. He drove a golf ball from his knees, 275 straight down the fairway. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. And the first year I caddied for him, it was great conversation. The second year he had to pitch. So I think he left at the 13th hole. And Roger was with our group too. Jay Miller was with our group. During those times, I met John Daly, Robert Gomez, Jay Miller. We went down to the courtyard and had a few cold ones, and just amazing times. And Tim Wakefield, what he meant to the community, the Red Sox, Nesson. It was just when Kurt Schilling on his podcast said what he said, that Tim was and his wife were battling cancer, and the whole city went crazy because it wasn't his to tell everyone, and then to wake up yesterday, Dave Sharapan sent me a text and sent me it, and I was blown away. I was just like, you got to be kidding me. So life's too short here, guys. Both you guys rest in peace there. Before we jump on, I to the next, I got to say, what a gutless, disgusting. I got a lot more adjectives. The U.S. and the Ryder Cup.
Oh God, of all the things we were talking about today, I kept in the back of my mind. I was like, man, and there was a Ryder Cup this weekend, and then I keep forgetting about it. No, I mean, it was really certain people on Sunday gave a nice performance, but for some of those situations, I mean, forget about it. Yeah, I mean, Friday and Saturday, just an atrocity. Two of the worst days in U.S. Ryder Cup history, for God's sake. And then yesterday, I mean, for the most optimistic person, there was a second where you could say, man, if these two at the top went well, all we got to do is get these bottom two to flip. And it's like, all right, well, that's fine. But there's about 4 or 5 1-up, 2-ups that probably aren't going to stand like that. Let alone Scotty Scheffler not being able to close out Jon Rahm, which obviously you say trying to close out Jon Rahm, that's one of the hardest people to close out. But, Scotty Scheffler had his chances to close him out. So that one obviously was ugly. And then, yeah, the performances on day 1 and day 2 were absolutely abysmal. I mean, hats off. I think you give hats off to Max Homa for sure. He was fantastic. Hats off to Justin Thomas for the criticism that around that pick, and he showed up for the most part. And then I don't know the records off the top of my head, but there's a handful of players that obviously were not good at all. And I mean, as far as I didn't think it was going to be this bad, Jeff. But when Victor Hovland got as hot as he did, whatever it was in August, and there was a couple other guys that were starting to get real hot, and you had Aberg, the kid over there. Obviously, I think he lost to Brooks yesterday, if I'm not wrong. But nonetheless, you got a lot of guys, especially, I mean, Victor Hovland, if he's not, I don't know if Ryder Cup, I honestly don't know if Ryder Cup has anything to do with, world ranking points or whatever, but that guy is playing like the number one golfer in the world, hands down, far and away, the last 2 months. I mean, good grief, is he dominating golf courses right now. So hats off to them for a lot of ways, but like you said, I mean, I know there was a lot of back and forth reporting too that were really annoying to watch. I don't know how much of it was true with the Cantlay stuff and all the fractured locker room stuff. I don't think that locker room was fractured, but I also, whatever was going on with Cantlay, if any of that was true, it was unenjoyable to see from a USA fan standpoint. So if that's anywhere near it again in 2 years when I don't know, I'm drawing a blank what the location is, if it's set already, but
Beth Page,
back on our soil.
Beth Page,
yeah, there you go. Yep. You just can't have those types of annoying things going on, and I don't think they're really, because like I said, had Justin Thomas shown up and laid an egg when it was a disgrace, then we could be talking about the boys club and who we're picking and what goes into the choices, but that obviously wasn't it. Europe was just ready to go from the moment they were they teed things off, and USA just kind of seemed like they were coasting into it, like they were gonna dominate things. So and Zach Johnson as a captain, obviously has faced quite a bit of criticism, especially the first 2 days. So I'm interested to see if he continues in that role or not going forward the next 2 years here.
It was kind of comical. I've been to a Ryder Cup when it was in Brookline the last time, but Jesus, I don't know, sometime in the 90s or early 2000s, whenever it was. I was there for a practice round, met a young Sergio, a young Tiger, Payne Stewart walked by us, and then that was right after, I think, he had that plane crash not too long afterward. And I was there for the opening round on Friday. I wasn't there, obviously. That was the year Justin Leonard sunk like the 65-footer and ran across the green. I did talk to a few locals. I was like, well, you got 2 years to get ready because I think I'll take the drive. I think I'm about 4 hours from Bethpage. So to get up there just for the atmosphere. The funny was wake up Friday morning down 0-4 and then just watching the matches. And we had an opportunity to close out 3 of them. And it looked like we had 2 in the bank, and then the third one was going to be tougher, but we had the lead, and they get halved in all 3 of them. And you kind of knew right then we were in trouble. But just what the Ryder Cup means to these guys when they bring up the names of Seve, Olazabal, and you saw the Luke Donalds, and then just to look at them on paper, Rahm, Rory, and as you said, and I said to one of my friends, and I'll say it to you and everyone watching and listening here, we're never going to get a decent price on Victor Hovland again. That's for sure.
No, hell no. And not only is he winning whatever he won the last couple of months, but I was trying to look back and see what some of these scores were. I mean, him and Aberg dominating Harman and Homa. We talked about Homa as the best player on the team this weekend, and they come back and have that one with Thomas and Spieth, who is a great USA team, and then 9-7 over Koepka and Scotty Scheffler, I think, is the one that done after 11 holes. They win 9 out of those 11 holes against Scotty Scheffler and Brooks Koepka is maybe all you need to say there. So, Victor's not sneaking up on anybody next year, and that's the tough part. I mean, he might even have I'm drawing a blank on who kind of had that situation this year, but he could be even, top 15 for 10 weeks in a row, and he'll still be at those types of prices, and you probably aren't cashing any bets on him. But nonetheless, I don't think he's dropping back to the pack. I think all systems go from this point, honestly.
No, and I always enjoyed, he was never obviously he wasn't in the Scheffler, Rahm, Rory tier, and then the next tier was the Xanders and a few other. Then he was usually in that third tier, so it always started with a 2. Is it 22, 24, 25 to 1? You'll only see a 1 and something else. I mean, he's going to be locked into those prices. He'll still be a step below, again, Rahm and Rory, but he'll be in that next tier. And as we were building and putting together this U.S. team, and you just look at it, Scotty Scheffler hadn't made a putt in 6 months. Ricky Fowler, who was a great story this year, don't get me wrong, just was running out of gas. Jordan Spieth looked lost. Cantlay crying because he's not getting paid, didn't wear the hat, and the reason was because it didn't fit, he said. Xander almost getting bounced because of Netflix. The list is endless. They look like the Brady Bunch.
Right, and like I said, Spieth, I think, I can't remember what his final, I think he ends up hanging. No, he actually, that's right, Lowry came back and halved it with Spieth on Sunday. Otherwise, Spieth was looking like he had the Sunday bounce back. That's right, but no, Spieth, I think there still is some tuning and as far as what we were talking about as what we're picking out of this team, because honestly, I think like Keegan Bradley is one of the guys that is arguing he should have been on there, or he has the argument to make, but he's also a guy that hasn't had Ryder Cup success in the past either. So and Morikawa, I don't know what his full record was, but he obviously wasn't the same guy this entire season. So as far as the U.S. team, there's some bounce-back candidates that if they're playing their best, then, this team is probably better than the Europe team. But you've got 3 or 4 guys on Team Europe that are, Aberg, Højgaard, who are young 20s that look like if a couple things go right, they're going to be in that, top 20 golfers in the world perennially as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then, you got a handful of other USA guys as well. So I don't know. Scotty's obviously the guy that has the most potential there, but if he's not making putts, then that's not as valuable to a Ryder Cup team as it is for his own career, as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, and Morikawa just was off just a smidge all year. He's probably the guy that we might get most value as we circle the wagons. I backed off golf till we'll wait till we get to Hawaii and we can get the Hawaii-California tour early next year when you and I start back on some golf there. Before we get to the NFL, college football, we haven't talked in a long time. Georgia, definitely vulnerable. They can be beat this year. Defense is great, I'm not saying, but offensively, look, I don't want to use the word challenged, but they are challenged right now. Bama, big week this week at A&M against Jimbo, only 2.5-point favorites there. LSU loses to Florida State opening day and then look like they got it cranked up, but Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, hats off to them, lose at Tuscaloosa, come back and put up a 55 spot to come back and beat LSU there. My preseason darling and my team that was going to shock the world and not only win the conference but get into the Final Four was Washington. I love what I'm seeing with Penix Jr. Their two wide receivers kind of played grab ass there over the weekend. They got a W. They got a big game coming up in 2 weeks there. Texas this week against Oklahoma, the red rifle rivalry there. But I wanted to get a couple minutes with you in the Big Ten. Michigan defense phenomenal. You'll get a kick out of this. 2 weeks ago, we gave out the Rutgers team total under 9.5 at Michigan. They scored in the first minute and a half, didn't score the rest of the game. Nebraska 9.5, left it on the desk. Michigan's defense is phenomenal. Ohio State, very fortunate to beat Notre Dame, of course, there. Yeah. And then Penn State, who I don't think other than Dave Sharapan and a few others are talking enough about. So give us your temperature on the Big Ten and what you're seeing so far 1 month into the season.
Yeah, throw me into that ring with Penn State there. They've been the team that it's not an emphatic, not standing on the bandwagon saying they're going to go undefeated and be in the college football playoff. If you're asking me who my college football for is, Penn State, I am making that claim. But I think it's a situation where you could have a three-way tie where Penn State might beat Ohio State, Michigan might beat Penn State, and maybe Ohio State beats Michigan, and they all have one loss against each other. I think that scenario is very much on the table here because I understand why people aren't giving Penn State that credit and it's really only the last 2-3 years. You go back 5, 6, 7 years, early parts of this Franklin era, and they were the number 2 team with Ohio State and had some really, really close calls. But obviously, these last 2 teams, it's a clear, Ohio State and Michigan, and Penn State's better than the rest of the conference probably, but a clear gap between them and Ohio State and Michigan. And I think whether that's Ohio State maybe coming down to the pack a little bit, or Penn State getting better, or maybe both, but I think they're on that same level for the most part. But when Penn State, if we're talking Penn State versus Michigan, we saw what happened last year, and whether or not Penn State's rushing defense can hold up the way they did not do last year against Michigan is going to be the question again when they meet this year. So if their rush defense can stand tall and neutralize Michigan a little bit, then Penn State could have a chance to go undefeated here. But at the end of the day, all 3 of these teams are really, really good. Ohio State, like you said, I had Notre Dame plus the 3.5, so I wasn't kicking myself too much. But if you ask me who's winning that game, I was making the claim that Notre Dame's going to win that game. And at the end of the day, they still do have that chance because they have a couple games on their schedule to get there. But if they won that game, Notre Dame was very much in the college football playoffs themselves with not only that win, and even if you get that win and lose to USC or something like that, and your only loss is one loss, especially if there's not 4 or 5 undefeated teams, then Notre Dame was getting in. So Notre Dame, obviously a little sidetrack, still has that opportunity to some degree, but Ohio State, their defense has looked phenomenal, but obviously that offense with McCord is still, to be determined what we're going to see, especially when we get into those couple of matchups there. Not to mention the 4th team, and I hate to say it because we do this every single year, maybe not in the upper echelon category, but the team that Ohio State is playing this year has looked quite fantastic themselves in Maryland, but you can roll your eyes at me, and I'm kind of rolling my eyes at myself because we get to this point from the inception of Maryland being in the Big Ten, which is about 10 years now. I think maybe there was a couple of stinker years where they were an afterthought altogether, but there's been 5, 6, 7 years where you get to this point and it's like, hey, what's up with Maryland here? In the last few years, obviously Tua's little brother, Talia, and then you get to whether it's one of these Ohio State games, Penn State games. Last year, to give them credit, they hung with Michigan, but obviously they finally match up against Michigan and lose. They did hang into that game. But in previous years, it's even just I think there was an Iowa game where you thought that they were making that final entrance into the Big Ten and establishing themselves, and then Iowa whoops them 50-17 or something like that. So I don't think we're going to get that again where Ohio State is beating the doors off of them. And I'm not saying Maryland is pulling off the upset, but I do think you could see something similar to what you saw with Maryland against Michigan last year, where Michigan only beat them 34-27, and this fantastic year that they had was like, well, a couple plays go differently in that Maryland game, and they go down in that game. So, again, not sitting on the table screaming Maryland's going to beat them, but I do think it's an early game, so I don't know who that favors as far as maybe someone coming out snoozing a little bit. But it would not shock me if Maryland gives Ohio State a run for their money this weekend. Having said that, do I think Maryland is the dark horse for this Big Ten East? No. If they were in the Big Ten West, I'd probably be screaming that they're the best team in the Big Ten West, and they're going to win that side of the conference. But they obviously have to play all three of these big boys. So at the end of the day, I do think Maryland is pretty good. They haven't really been tested. Their defense has looked good with who they've been given. Haven't been tested, you would say, obviously. And their offenses look good. Haven't really been tested. But nonetheless, if they can pull off one of these three upsets and are a 10-2 team, maybe they make a New Year's Bowl or something along those lines. So, again, I'll pump the brakes on that. I don't want it to sound like I'm the leading the Maryland bandwagon or anything like that, but at least don't overlook them. I'd be a little skeptical to hammer Ohio State by 3 touchdowns this weekend, and maybe in any of the other 2 big games where they're playing against the big boys there in Maryland.
All right, we got one NFL game before we get to that. Over the weekend, what did I see? Again, a Detroit Lions team on Thursday that kind of won the game in the first quarter. We talked backstage. The biggest difference from what I've seen with just the eye test this year, and my MVP on the Lions was Aiden Hutchinson. He's just put so much pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. Their defense has played great. They did, have a brain fart against Seattle, who's playing tonight, but a great bounce back there on Thursday. Yesterday, a Patriots team that, again, they opened up against Philly, down 16-0. Then they played Miami, down 17-3. Then they beat the Jets. And then they go into Dallas and Max throwing the ball across the field against one of the better defenses. And it was going to be a tough spot, but it was even tougher with Dallas losing to Arizona last week there. So Pats Nation not happy. They're 2-point favorites in New Orleans this week. Bills made a statement. When I had Ron on Friday at 5:00, the last 2 weeks, he has still had the Bills as the number 1 team in the NFL. So hats off to Ron at Ron A Sports there. I guess we want to look to teams that were undefeated, and the Bills obviously had that one loss. But their defense, what I've noticed from them, is fast. I mean, it's like, whoa, these guys are really fast. Tua slowed down a little last on Sunday there. Denver and Chicago. Hey, Bears fans, you got the first and second pick this year going into the draft. Don't screw that one up there. What else did I see?
How about
49ers and
I was going to throw in Bengals putting up a 3 spot at Tennessee, 27-3. Bengals looking ugly.
Yeah, I talked to a few colleagues. I hated the spot for Joe and company. He's got the bad calf, and the front 7 for the Titans defense I knew was going to put a lot of pressure on him. And then fragile T. Higgins goes out again. I'm talking fantasy there, guys. I don't root on anyone to get hurt there. Obviously, this offense is just the shell of themselves. The same with Joe. At this point, I think he's doing more hurt to the team. I'm not saying Browning's going to come in and light it up, but you can't. Joe's offensive line sucks anyways. Okay. Yeah. Now you're playing on a 1.5 feet. You got a bad calf, and your best wide receivers plays take a little longer to develop. You're not going to get stuck in getting sacked, and more sacks. So good call there on the Cincinnati team. The 49ers, CMC, God bless them. I don't have enough shares of him in fantasy. Hats off to the Rams and McVay. I dead and buried 2-2. Puka Nuka. If you didn't draft him, shame on you. I got him in 1 spot, but that was luck. With Cooper Kupp maybe coming back. Big game they got this week. The Rams are hosting the Eagles. Only 4.5-point underdogs at home. That's a little what I saw. What'd you see over the weekend.
Yeah, just to transition off of that Rams team, the whole season and all together, I mean, that's a team that we were all right. A lot of people just writing off. And I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl contender by any means. They're obviously, you would say, not better than the 49ers. I think that's fair to say pretty easily there. But you look at their defense and tell me who you recognize other than Aaron Donald. And you're scratching your head at every single one of their names. And the fact that they've maintained competency on that side of the ball, let alone obviously still having an offense with Stafford looking good. So, I have to imagine their defense is probably going to get beat up in certain matchups because they still are pretty thin there. But at the end of the day, I mean, hats off to what they're doing. They're playing hard. They're competing in games if they're not winning them, and obviously coming back yesterday. So hats off to Stafford, who's looking good there. Saints team that as soon as Derek Carr goes down, I think 3 field goals, because I don't think they scored against the Packers as soon as he goes down last week against the Packers, and then Jameis Winston obviously looking ugly there. It's a Bucs team that 3-1. I definitely wasn't picking them to win this division, and I wasn't writing them off like certain people were. But I did not expect this from their offense at the very least. I was high on their defense making a bigger push this year to be a reason why they win some games, but their offense has done enough to complement that defense. I mean, you got a lot of defensive players on that side on that team that. Well, when you name them off, because they won that Super Bowl, because they've been playing high competitive games for 2-3 years in a row, you think a lot of these guys are older than they really are. But, I mean, Vita Vea, for example, is still south of 30. Devin White is 25. I mean, you've got some dudes that still have a lot of good football left in him. So I think it's a defense that I think is still really for real. And it's maybe not as good as they were when they won the Super Bowl, but at least maybe better than they were last year. And if you can keep Baker from avoiding too much pressure. I mean, a huge win against the Saints there, and a division where all the other 3 teams are obviously either Carolina 0-4, these other 2 teams looking shaky at times. They can obviously win this division at 9-10 games or something along those lines for Tampa. So defensively, really impressed there. Eagles still, I mean, Eagles 4-0, but. Nobody's really impressed by them yet, and so if they can get out of, I don't know if you want to call it a Super Bowl hangover. Obviously, they've got some different, scheming going on a little bit here, but gotten through the easy part of their schedule or an easy-ish part of their schedule at 4-0 and haven't looked good. So from that standpoint, you feel good, feeling like you still have a lot of good football left to be played, but so interested to see what we see from the Eagles the rest of the way. Washington, at the very least, has been pretty competitive. I think they're probably, going to be a middling team for the most part, but there's been times where they've looked really, really good, obviously, there. Let's see. The Chargers, I mean, the Chargers are still the Chargers. Winning that game, it has been a game that they would lose in the past, so I guess credit to them somehow, but I mean, Aiden O'Connell not looking fantastic, and keeping them in that game the way they did was still a little concerning. Going with the QB sneak. I know you needed the QB sneak, but going with the QB sneak for your $50 million quarterback when he's got a splint on his arm, ramming him out the middle was maybe not what I would do in Week 4 against a bad football team in the Raiders there. Maybe I'm crazy myself. I don't know. But a lot of faith in Chargers offense, not a lot of faith, as has been the case the last 2-3 years in the coaching staff over there in the Chargers. So on a week-to-week basis, it's still going to be a team that lights up my eyes because I like what they can do offensively. But at the end of the day, it can get ugly, and some of the coaching decisions have still maintained to be a head-scratching from your couch, obviously, there. So, and as far as that division is concerned, I mean, and playoffs are concerned, you've got a couple teams that, whether it's injury or whatnot, don't look as good as they were expected to be. So a Chargers team that's still very much alive in the playoffs there, but beyond that, I mean, you have a Ravens team that's kind of quietly winning games. You beat, a Cleveland team without Watson. They're 3-1. I think that's maybe the team that you would say is playing the best that people aren't giving enough or aren't talking about still. They're still somehow kind of under the radar a little bit there because some of the games obviously been ugly. They lose to the Colts, not pretty there. But at the end of the day, they're winning some games, and I expect them to continue winning some games. So. And I had been, Cleveland has looked great at times, but obviously after yesterday with no Deshaun Watson, I'm curious to see what they look like going forward. I like a lot of what their defense can do, but obviously, you need that offensive complement there. And Watched a lot of the games with a room full of Bears fans, so I think everyone's. I think everyone's had enough talk about the Bears, so I'll spare everyone there. And like you said, good chance of, if not 1-2, two, at least one in the top three, if not two in the top five, if not 1-2, like you said. So, like you said, Caleb Williams, even with the good Justin Fields performance, I think a lot of them are still clamoring for Caleb Williams there. However they can get it, and the Falcons and Jaguars, obviously a lot of goofy stuff can go on in London there. Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars at least looked a lot better. Falcons are going to be a weird team week in and week out, kind of as they were last year, where John Robinson looks freaking unbelievable as a running back. He looks awesome, and then Desmond Ridder, when you give him some pressure, he looks really, really bad. And you mentioned something fantasy-wise. I mean, the same old story with Kyle Pitts. I mean, the greatest decoy of all time, apparently. Not exactly translated to offensive success for the Atlanta Falcons. So maybe we could try something different and maybe find some 5 to 10 yard routes for Kyle Pitts as opposed to spread them out wide and run 40-yard go routes for your tight end, who granted is very athletic and can do that, but maybe give him the full route tree once in a while. So I don't know about you. I like some of the things Arthur Smith does, but as a play caller, a little head scratching at times. So from an organizational standpoint, I think he's a good coach, but a few things that leaves something to be desired for me in Atlanta. But they're a team that has looked good at times. So in that division, I mean, it's not crazy to say that they can still even win that division, let alone have a competitive season. Maybe they go 9-8 and win the division. I don't know. So. That's about all I saw. Tonight, there's a couple teams that are, obviously teams that could go either way here in the season, good or bad. So interested to see what we see tonight. But aside from that, I think Vikings-Panthers is the one where I think everyone was expecting this from the Vikings, but now they're 1-3. I know they got a tough game. I think they play Kansas City this upcoming week. I think they play the Bears after that and then the 49ers. But from that point on, their schedule gets a lot easier. And so if that 7th spot in the NFC is a 8 or 9 win team, not necessarily writing off the Vikings. Again, I don't think they're that good of a team. Offensively, obviously, they've been putting up some numbers. But their schedule does get kind of weak in the middle here to where I know everyone's talking about trading Kirk everything here. And obviously, if they lose the next 3 games and they're 1-6, then maybe those talks are serious. And even if we're 2-5, I'm sure we're probably still talking like that. But the schedule does get a lot easier here after the Niners here a few weeks. So I think if the Vikings still believe in themselves, they're not going to trade Kirk, and they're going to try and make a late push at the playoffs there if the door is open like it was kind of last year in the NFC. So I'm not holding my breath necessarily. There's going to be a lot of easy games that they could obviously lose like they almost did yesterday. So I guess I'm kind of pumping the brakes on the Kirk Cousins trade talk, where, again, if they're 1-6, then obviously I'm probably walking that back. But even at 2-5, they're probably going to think that they can rattle off 6 or 7, out of 8 games, especially with what they did last year. So interested to see what we see from the Vikings going forward there.
Yeah, and I'll close for the London game, the Jags, who did finally look good. I get to stay in London for the week, and in come the Bills. So I think I saw the Bills 4.5-point favorites. So the Jags a week to get ready to get settled in London. Bills coming off an emotional game against the Dolphins. Now fly over to London. So it'll be interesting to see A, what Jaguar team shows up, and B, obviously what Bills team shows up there for that game. I'm going to go to tonight's game, see if there's any more movement. My true numbers is 2 with a 44.5. Right now it's circa. Actually, the whole Vegas Strip is now up to 2.5 with a 46. So like Thursday night, the Lions got to 2.5. I know a lot of people that bought a full point. Got the Packers plus 3.5. Felt very comfortable with that play. So anyone that likes the Giants today, I think, again, you can go buy a full point if you want, minus 130. Hey, I'll take the Giants plus 3.5. They're saying if they lose, hopefully it's by a field goal or less. The true number, 44.5. Vegas was saying 23-20, 24-20. 23-21, somewhere in that area. I truthfully don't have a feel for it. I was impressed with what I saw with Seattle in Detroit. I was depressed what I saw from Seattle second half opening day against the Rams. But as you can see, the Rams can do that to some teams. Tough game. No Saquon Barkley. Wan'Dale Robinson back for the Giants. My hidden gem, if they ever, guys, I think you can get plus 700, plus 800. Jalen Hyatt. Put him in. Tell him to go to the mailbox. Daniel Jones, you wheel way back and just throw it as far as you can. He's going to catch it today. Anytime touchdown. But what's your thoughts today, Seattle and the Giants?
So from what you just said, it sounds like we're pretty close in our thoughts here on this one. From an on-paper standpoint, my struggle with kind of hesitating a little bit is that I have things that I like about both these teams and don't like about both these teams. From a Giants standpoint, I'm a big Brian DeBoer believer, and I think he typically gives whoever his offense is the best tools to be successful with, given what their strengths are, which obviously at times is very limited with Daniel Jones. So that's where my issue is not believing so much in Daniel Jones, but believing in Brian DeBoer to make him, depending on what the defensive situation looks like, might be competent. So if you're looking at a situation where Daniel Jones is protected and he's having some accuracy, I think this Giants offense could have some success. As far as the Giants offense versus the Seahawks defense, without Saquon Barkley, I think it's should be pretty clear that the Giants are going to be throwing the ball, and it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle responds, because they've been, just on paper, solid against in the rush these first three games, and has not been very good against the pass. I mean, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, and it was Andy Dalton with Carolina, actually were able to move the ball and throw the ball with what they had. So, whatever you think is possible with this Giants receiving core, I guess I don't know. Aside from, I believe it was Carolina last week, the first 2 weeks, the Seattle defense has given up some yards to tight ends, but I know a lot of people are hoping for a lot more from Waller, and he hasn't given it to him. So it's tough. I mean, you almost want to say this is the game Waller's going to break out, and then the next thing you know, he's going to have 2 catches for 20 yards going into the fourth quarter, and then the Giants are going to have, are going to be struggling offensively, and you're screaming, what the hell is going on? There's at least try to get it to Darren Waller here. So I'm with you where at the end of the day, I don't really know what to expect from Seattle's offense versus the Giants' defense. The Giants' defense has obviously been a little all over the place. And the concern, obviously, with the Giants is that they've played 6 halves of football, and only one of them was good, and the other 5 were an absolute train wreck, essentially. So I think at the very least, we're at home. The Giants are at home tonight. I think they're going to have a lot more sense of urgency. So I don't think you're going to see that. Maybe they don't have 2 fantastic halves, but I think you're at least going to avoid the horrific half that they've been having at least once, if not both the halves, like they did against Dallas, and obviously not very good either half against San Francisco last week. And again, going back to that Arizona game, I know the first half was ugly, but it's an Arizona team that's been playing hard and at least playing scrappy. So kind of surprised them a little bit, and they wake up a little bit there. So I think the Giants' offense is going to have some success. Daniel Jones throwing the ball, and maybe, I'm drawing a blank on what his rushing prop is. It was a little, obviously need a big player or maybe 2 20-yard runs. So it seemed a little inflated. So I'm not jumping into the Daniel Jones rushing prop because it did seem a little inflated. But I would be surprised if we don't see
37 and a half. Does that sound right?
Sounds about right. That honestly might even seem a little higher than what I saw it earlier today. So I assume probably rising throughout the day as far as the over-under on that one, probably, unless I'm just mistaken. But either way, gun to my head, I think he does go over that, but I think I might have even saw like minus 125, minus 130 to the over on that. So not one that I'm jumping straight into necessarily, but at the end of the day, it's tough to break down who the receiving yards are going to go to in this Giants offense right now, so that if you're trying to pinpoint if the Giants offense is successful, passing offense is successful, who is it going to go to? But I do kind of feel like we're going to see at least a halfway decent, minimum 20 points from the Giants here tonight. So I'm flirting with the Giants team total, but they obviously Daniel Jones, they could move in the ball, and he makes 1-2 mistakes throughout the night for an interception, and we're looking at a 14-point offensive performance. So I guess the main thing is I'm leaning towards the Giants, and I'm leaning towards their pass offense looking better. But it wouldn't surprise me if Seattle comes out and smacks them in the mouth, and the Giants are looking like they have done 5 of the 6 halves that we have seen from them so far this year.
Yeah, and how can you beat Seattle? You used to be able to run on them. They were a sieve, and again, this would have been a big Barkley day. People remember what they saw last, and it was Daniel Jones running for his life at San Francisco. They played at San Francisco that Thursday night, right? They haven't played since.
Correct. Yeah.
Am I correct?
That's right. Yep.
So they've had a little extra time off, more than most. I think more of a must-win for the Giants. The West right now, let me see, undefeated San Fran, 2-2 Rams, a pesky Arizona team who plays the Bengals this week too, by the way, hanging around, got 1 win against Dallas, and the Rams. Who am I missing? Seattle.
No, you said them all.
Seattle.
Yeah, you said yeah.
Yes. So Seattle's got a loss opening day to the Rams. And then they beat Atlanta at home last week, and then they beat Detroit the week before. So more of a sense of
Carolina
urgency from the
sorry.
Giants, I think. There, Carolina, yes, Carolina. And actually, Carolina played a great game there too. It was close until late third, early fourth. Team total Seattle 23.5, juiced over -135, and the Giants 21.5 at Bet Online. 22.5 at Heritage. So again, I think a lot of people run to the window to say Seattle scores 24 or more. They'll probably get stuck on 23. And do the Giants get to 20, 21, or 24? That will be the deciding factor there. Again, Jalen Hyatt, if anyone wants some pizza and beer money, anytime touchdown around +700 or 800 there. Closing thoughts, Riley.
No, I mean, to kind of piggyback off of that, you kind of mentioned it. I mean, as far as not only do people, as far as the Giants, look at what they saw last, getting their ass kicked excuse my language, against the Niners there. 2 of their 3 games, they've gotten their butts kicked against. I mean, would you be surprised to say that the Giants and the Cowboys and the Niners beat the hell out of the Giants for 4 quarters? I don't think you'd be that surprised. And so now you're giving them a team that. While obviously it was a playoff team last year, doesn't have the same firepower as those 2 teams on either side of the ball, really. So I think it's a team that, with some sense of urgency, this Giants team can bounce back and at the very least keep this one very competitive, as I was kind of mentioning. Maybe they don't win. Maybe Seattle has a great game plan and they're very motivated themselves and come in and get the win. But at the very least, I think this is going to be a really competitive game here. So. As far as I'll give my touchdown score. I'll go with I don't think it's gonna be Matt Breida. I know that's where people go for the name there, but or obviously he's been a name, backup name, whatnot. But I guess I'll go their other running back, the Giants, Mr. Gary Brightwell. Did not have a good game on the ground last week, but had a couple of catches for some nice gains against the Niners. So I'll go Gary Brightwell out of the Giants backfield, plus 370 getting the score there.
All right, I'll jump over to the Seattle side. I'll stay off. Everyone's on Kenneth Walker, who has looked great the last few weeks. Yeah. I'll take his counterpart there, Mr. Give me a glass of Chardonnay. What is Chardonnay at? Anytime touchdown.
I see on this one I see 310, but I can pop over to see if we got any better odds. But the one I'm on is typically better touchdown odds there. So it looks about plus 310. Yeah, plus 310. The other one's 275.
We're going to have a glass of Chardonnay. All right. Tomorrow, actually, let me see something here before we close. I want to see some times here for us. 3:08, 4:38. So tomorrow, myself and Riley will be back at 5 o'clock. It will probably be at the halfway point, Texas and Tampa. Right now, I got Tampa minus 147 against Texas. And then at 4:38, Toronto goes to Minnesota. I think Minnesota's lost like 18 in a row in the playoffs. My true number is -110. They're -111. Actually, 107 now. Minnesota and Toronto. Then the night games, Arizona at Milwaukee. Milwaukee is -179. You can get the D-backs +162. And then at 8:08, Marlins and Phillies. Phillies right now -165 against the Marlins. So we'll be talking some bases for sure. We'll recap the Monday night game, and we'll get ourselves set for some playoff baseball and some football. So everyone, thank you for watching and listening. Good crowd here today. For myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Mr. Riley Magnuson at Riley_Magnuson, the one. We're back, guys. It's October. 3 months left in 2023. Playoff baseball starts tomorrow. So bring your popcorn, Cracker Jacks, and all that good stuff. Rest in peace, Mr. Wakefield, Mr. Russ Francis, and we shall see everyone real soon.